An apple a day is not enough. Don't let me start preaching. But shouldn't the children of the country that's the wealthiest also be the children of the country that's the healthiest? That makes sense. You'd think that would be true. I know I would. I'm just saying, wouldn't you? But that's not the case with our kids these days. Kids' health is declining in all kinds of ways. We need to improve it. We can, and we will. But it starts with thinking of health as a skill. A 21st century skill that you practice. Practice makes perfect. The unhealthy can't hack this. We've got to teach our kids by example every day. And it's tough because people stop listening when they think they know what you're going to say, like drink more water. Eat more vegetables, especially the dark, leafy green ones. Eat less sugar. Don't drink soda, especially the sugary caffeine ones. Stop watching TV. Go play outside. Go for a run or a walk or a bike ride. Get your heart rate up every day of the week. Chew your food more. Eat slower. Meditate. Sit still. Get your heart rate lower. Set yourself a health goal. It doesn't have to be wild. It takes a lot of things to raise a healthy child. And healthy kids do better in school. They have better jobs. They lead better lives. They marry healthier husbands and healthier wives. Good health is a skill, and teachers need to teach it. Now you got me preaching, so I might as well preach it. Health is not a one-semester class you take in middle school. It should be a part of every subject, not the exception, but the rule. Learn about good health in math, in English, and in social studies. Work on a project about nutrition in science with your buddies. And parents need to be involved too. Teachers can't do this alone. Good health starts at home. We need to own this issue because the stakes are high. What does it matter if we try to increase our scores in math and reading if scores are dying before their time because they got fatter and fatter? Healthy students make wealthy earners, not to mention better learners. The choices you make every day have the biggest impact in the biggest of ways. Check it. Why else would they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away? But new solutions to old problems, that's the American way. Who cares about keeping the water clean and pure? There isn't a problem if they can't sell you the cure. Don't keep looking for new technology to be your medical savior. Of course, it's easier to be saved by a miracle than it is to change your behavior. So we need to value health education the way we value math and reading. We can't keep feeding our children the same old lessons like junk food full of saturated fat and sugar and chemicals. We can't do better than that. We can and we will. And that's the truth, because the future belongs to the healthy youth. Amen.
Amen, brother. Love it. Okay. So I know it went quickly and hard to absorb and remember it all. So here's a copy of the words for you to keep forever. And would you just take a minute and kind of highlight or make a note or something of your favorite parts or your takeaway or what you want to remember or what you can apply to your classroom. So make meaning out of this for a second, please, with your highlighters. And then
Oh, you got two?
they're different designs. So just pick one.
I love when he said healthy students make wealthy earners, not to mention better earners. I think that's something I put in my classroom.
Oh, that's great. And if we could really convince leadership of that.
Cool, like team building or activity at the beginning for them to do like a reading, like a numbered reading where they know their line.
The kids?
The kids, it came from the kids' voices.
Oh, neat. There's a great idea. Thank you. Who else has something to share?
The one thing that stuck out to me, even more so this time because it's such a big, important, hot topic in our society right now, is the pharmaceutical connection. Like, it's not a problem if they can sell you the cure. Yeah. So instead of prevention, it's all about fixing it after it's broken.
It's not about finding the cause, it's about
On the cardiac rehab instead of. All right, anybody else?
I like
where it says should be a part of every subject. And, do some cross curriculum with other teachers, in classrooms as well. Cause I thought at one point it was like, we were like a dumping ground. They weren't performing in other subjects, so let's just put them in health or PE. Let's just get them back with something, but.
And what I always think is they always want us to teach their stuff in our class to integrate writing and literacy, but they don't ever want to integrate our stuff in science, right, Carrie?
That's right.
Okay, anybody else? Any
Health is not
profound thoughts?
science. Health is not science, Donna. I know, right?
All right. And our next activity is going to be, you are going to get this beautiful poster that says here, and it has a great visual of a traditional classroom, and you can look at it up close when you get it. And to illustrate that this is a different way of looking at this, or visually to think paradigm shift. If you turn it this way, this is what a skills-based health education class might look like. So everybody needs one of these, and you're going to have, and there's a scissors and a glue stick by you. And then everybody's going to get a copy of this, and the colors don't mean anything, but for every traditional classroom description, there is a corresponding skills base. So there's sets, okay? So your task is to cut these apart and separate them by traditional base and skills base and glue them on them.
Thank you.
How's that? What questions might you have?
While we're transitioning with this, has anyone seen What the Health?
I started to watch it yesterday.
The movie on
I watched it.
Is that not amazing?
What is it?
It's called What the Health. It's a
Oh,
movie
What
on
the-
Netflix. What the Health.
About veganism,
There's
basically.
some really good documentaries.
Oh,
yeah.
since the last time I thought health, when we Supersize Me came out.
Yeah.
And that was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just
So there's some really good ones.
So what's the message of What the Health?
Go vegan.
Yeah,
Plant-based
basically
diet.
plant-based diet,
Okay.
because, it's funny because it gets into politics too, a little bit about the American Heart Association, the Diabetes Association.
Care Council.
That they get all this money from organizations and companies that have zero interest in our health. as a
In
matter of
textbook
fact.
companies.
Yeah, so it's very
Impact curriculum.
Okay, and I'd just like to plant a seed and suggest a thought that if you show that video or any other video, you think about what skill it's teaching and what related skill-based activities and practice go with it. Because I think we're all guilty of turning off the lights and turning on a video, and kids could engage or not engage or whatever. So I'm hoping that you'll approach everything. Oh, you know what, Cindy, leave it alone.
Oh,
If you
we're
don't
cutting
mind.
this. Okay.
Yeah, you're cutting apart this. Because I want you to have to keep
Yeah.
shifting it.
Has
As a
anyone seen
visual.
Fed Up?
I wasn't clear. What?
Fed Up. If you look at it on Netflix, it's two little M&Ms that say F-U.
Oh, cute.
But it's, it follows 3 teenagers who are struggling with weight issues, and one of them is even considering gastric bypass, and he's like 14 or 15. And then like one of them, it just talks about how physical activity isn't enough, because like one girl is super active and she's very overweight. But she still doesn't eat the greatest, like, it's like she tries to eat healthy, but it's not healthy, like that common misconception of what is actually healthy. But it's really good, and it talks about like the sugar issue and like how many people are struggling with that. So it's a very good one if you just
Is
want
that
to
on
watch.
Netflix also?
Mhm.
So that
It's a
might
pretty
fit
good
somewhere with mindful eating or skill-based nutrition or decision making.
There's another one that you couldn't show in class, but it was available for your library to purchase. So like our students can rent DVDs. It's Bigger, Faster, Stronger. And it's about steroid use and, again, misconception of drug use and how it gets started, and then you don't think it's that big of a problem, and then someone dies. And, but it's pretty interesting. I feel like it would really appeal to the boys a lot. So they're good.
Aren't they cute? No, are they terrible?
I
thought they were so
someone
cute.
with like low motor skills, and so you're used to pulling the scissors apart.
Well,
Just
somebody-
like,
here's a
you
big
know.
one. You can have the big girl's scissors.
I'm like, I
Um,
have low hand motor skills.
I got them out of the
Like,
CRC, and I just thought they were
I'm used
so
to
cute.
opening my
Okay.
scissors up.
That's funny
We're
because I
gonna
felt weird that I didn't know what was wrong.
Because we operate them with our fingers, and with operating,
I'm differentiating learning experiences for you.
I can't cut this.
We can keep talking if you want, if you can talk and,
I don't know. I watched the part in What the Hell that was talking about how sugar is not a problem, and I'm like,
Well,
I'm sorry.
No, you have to listen to it. You have to listen to it more.
Okay.
Because don't cut it off there because.
Because I
it
kind of
gives
did.
you that
I'm
pressure.
like,
Yeah.
well, then my kids came in and they wanted to watch Moana, and so they
Yeah.
like Moana way better than What the Hell. And so,
No, you do have, definitely have to.
okay, so
listen.
I need to give it another chance.
Yeah.
I just carried my phone around in my pocket, still on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I just listened to it while I was doing my stuff around the house.
Okay.
Doing laundry and stuff.
Yeah.
So I just carried my phone in my pocket.
It's like a podcast.
But the one thing, talk about meat and stuff like that is, and I never really thought about it before, but like our huge, strong animals, like elephants and apes, things like that, are all plant-based diets.
Yeah.
So we talk about, oh, we'll lose strength and protein if we don't have the protein from meat and all that kind of stuff. And they're totally plant-based. Look
There's
how
so
strong
much
they are.
protein in the standard veggies.
There's another one, I can't think of the name right now, but it follows a guy and he talks to like some Olympians who are like vegetarians and that
Yeah.
you don't have to.
They have a bunch of those people. They have a
But
bunch,
then
but they have those.
I have all kinds of podcasts about good fats of animal fat for your gut, and as I have a gut disease, it's like, we don't strain our meat, we put as much healthy fats in my food.
I'm sure it could
I have
fight
blood.
both ways.
So, yeah, it's like, it
Yeah.
all depends on.
Well, they talk about
like, I don't think I eat a healthy diet, but it's, I eat what I can eat.
They talk about the relationship between cancer and,
Mhm.
basically the one guy's doctor sums it up as like, just if you're ingesting dead meat, what do you think's gonna happen? It's a natural carcinogen. Dead meat is a natural carcinogen.
I wonder, which they probably don't have the research for it now, but the difference of organic meat versus non-organic meat.
Well, yeah, so like I don't have a problem with beef, but like I have a very high corn sensitivity, and I can't eat farm raised
Yeah.
steer.
No, you're fine. We're
There's
gonna cut out.
her
Because
rejected
the corn
scissors.
comes through the protein.
Yeah.
I can't have cow's milk because they eat the corn, but I can have
They talk about that
goats
too.
because they're foragers,
Yeah.
and those differences, like super minimal amount of corn residue left in the vaccine.
So I should go to Jeff Ruby's one more time before I watch all these.
Yes. That's exactly right.
Throw a question out there, like, how do y'all feel like Laura said, the skill-based health education classroom? Like,
What'd you say, Lorenzo?
Yeah, I was gonna throw a question out there, like, how the two pictures are different from each other, but like, when I look at the skill-based health education classroom, I have no problem with setting my class up, like, even my PE classes are set up, like, skill-based, but it's just, the only thing that, I guess, that I look at, is just like, when I look at the person with the iPad or whatever they're on, it's like, how do you, like, when you're giving students this type of freedom, it's like, how do you just make sure that you stay within their realm, but at the same time, even they may have their earbuds in, listen to music or whatever, but I mean, you give them this activity to help improve their health, but what if they're just, on some other activity with using technology? I mean, that's the only issue that I would have with giving them all, the freedom. Because I mean, you expect them to be like us as adults, to be like, okay, look, here's your task, and we're not going to say anything to you. Just do what you're supposed to do with your assignment. But I don't know for sure if they have that skill yet to give all that freedom to some. I mean, I'm not saying all of them are like that, but like with the way we use technology, how kids are today. I mean, I just feel like a lot of them were trying to use it as an escape and just, okay, you gave me this, but yeah, I'm over. I'm not saying that I'm not being disruptive, but I'm playing this game, or I'm on a social media site, and it's just like, I think it's going to be a constant battle. We're trying to make sure they're allowed to do this type of classroom arrangement.
And I can relate to exactly what you're saying. Certain classes where I try to go with this approach and the behaviors. So I have to line them up and be that teacher at the front of the class to get that classroom management under control. Because if it's a zoo, then the skills, they can't be taught if it's unorganized and it's clutter and you got, come on girl, Snapchat and doing all that stuff.
Right.
So that's something that we have to deal with, or pick and choose.
Well, I mean, that's something that's just going to just happen. Though.
Yeah.
It's not like people like us. I mean, it's just going to happen. You're going to have it probably on an ongoing basis, though, right?
Yeah.
So you wanted to speak to that, Tim?
Well, like I think two things. One, community and culture has to be developed in the room so that when you call that student out, that like you're not on task, maybe you have a rubric like you're not done yet. You say you're done, but it's not aligning to the rubric of finished, so I need you to get back to work. But that community of culture, which takes time, and I've been at schools where it takes me a year to like develop community and culture with kids. So, but if you don't have community and culture, like, and that sense of security and trust, respect, it's really hard to have a skills-based classroom
And
where they feel safe.
Yeah, I think if you sit down with the kids and you say, we're gonna do research on technology-based research, what are our parameters? And let the kids develop the expectations. You have it posted, so like the first time they're caught, not on task, they're off task, what's that consequence? And they buy into it because they created it. And eventually it may be that, Jessica cannot work on on her iPhone. She has to work on this because she can't stay on task, but it doesn't have to be the same for everybody, you know what I'm saying?
I would say, just an example, because I do some skill-based stuff already, there are some classes, and so therefore you have great culture with your other classes in this one class. I mean, some kids, they can't do it. I mean, it's literally, like I take my classes to the library, and we will do some research and do different things. Other kids are incredible at it. They're doing great. And once they do their research, they go get the paper and start working on the project, and they can do this and that. Because with others of them, that is too much freedom, it's too much independence, and they lose it. I mean, so you might have to literally take little Susie and sit them right next to you, and they're still doing the same thing, but
Provide them with the skills
they
the expectations.
can't. You're right. It takes some learning, because I've had some classes I'm like, that's it, we don't do these activities anymore. Like, you couldn't handle it. Like, so you change it. The rest of the classes get to do everything we had planned. We do something else. Like,
So I'm going to make a note here, because one of the issues you all want to consider is appropriate use of tech, because what you've named is the fact that the goal is, when you look at that picture, what we're seeing there is an image of students who are at the independent level, and they are not just using tech for fun, they are using tech to enhance their learning. That's the goal, is to put technology in the hands of students so that they come out learning at a deeper level, using their 21st century skills than they would have otherwise. And so you guys have named so many steps you can take already. You've talked about everything from the classroom culture, having the norms and the expectations set by the students, agreed to by the students. You've talked about parameters. You've talked about just like the training wheels, not expecting that students can go to independence. They have to be taught and scaffolded towards that independence. You can make your routines. It depends on your situation, your students. But you can make your routines what works for you. For example, I walk into a classroom in my building where tech is used all the time, and the procedure is that every single student with a device has to set it on the table face down, and they are not allowed to touch it unless the teacher says pick it up for this purpose. And they have ways to, they check over shoulders at different times. And if you touch it when you're not supposed to, or if you use it for something that's not what you're supposed to be using it, then you lose your phone privileges or device privileges for a little while, and you have to share with somebody else. So there are lots of different strategies you guys have already named. That is awesome. But we're just going to capture that so that that can be kind of an ongoing thing that you guys consider as you continue to move through these lessons.
One last thing to consider, this came up in the deeper learning training, because as soon as you suggest that, that's the first thing everybody says is, my kids don't know how to behave, I can't do this, I gotta keep them in rows, silent, blah, blah, blah. And she said, just consider which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Are the kids misbehaving because they're not engaged? And so if all of that things that you all just said and the deeper learning is in place, her contention was that the behavior problems will disappear. Just a thought.
So obviously Donna wanted to reframe you back into the bigger picture. We had started before lunch, we kind of started digging into kind of a little narrower view. How might this look within these lessons, within this unit? And then, to come back from lunch, Donna wanted to remind us of the big picture, that skills-based classroom and what this looks like. But now we're going to go ahead and zoom back in. And so we're going to pick back up with lessons 2 and 3 in just a minute. So if you want to take a second to kind of shift your materials back and put away your poster and get back into the goal setting unit of your binder. So before we talk about how we're going to look at lessons 2 and 3, a quick note about one of the terms that was used in lesson 1, and it comes up again in several other lessons, and that's the idea of the anchor chart. The authors talk about it in the book too, and I know many of you, if not all of you, have used them. But just to kind of clarify, in case there's any lack of clarity there, the anchor chart is just called an anchor chart because it anchors the learning. It's not just a wall decoration. An anchor chart, if it's used well, actually is an instructional tool. Like, it actually helps to add to the learning. So, for example, I would think that probably everybody would have an anchor chart. If you were working on a skill, it doesn't have to be their version. You could make your own, or you could use this one but blow it up. But having the skills cues posted somewhere would be a really natural anchor chart, because as you go through the lessons, they come up so often. And the teacher could visually remind the kids by, pointing to this, and it becomes an instructional tool. They start to make that connection. We just talked about this or did this. Oh, that was that skill cue right there. So that would be a natural anchor chart. And then it also mentions, for example, in lesson 1, it talked about starting an anchor chart with some of those definitions. So in addition to the skills cues, maybe you just have some simple little post-it note chart, and you were in lesson 1 and you gave the kids the definition of goal setting, so you just jotted over here, goal setting, and you write the definition. And then for the rest of this unit, it's the process of setting and working toward a goal. And then maybe during that same lesson later, when we talked about short and long term, I walked over, and I'm not going to do it now because this would get tedious, but maybe I paused and I quickly wrote up the definition for long term. And we just kind of kept this. And during the unit then, it's just shared thinking. We all, when we're talking about a long-term goal, it's up here. We all understand what we mean by long-term goal. I can even point to it if I want to. We're working on a long-term goal because we're working on this over the course of our semester. And the definition of long-term is it's over the course of weeks, months, possibly even years. And it would be just something to point to. So just a quick note about that idea of the anchor charts. For lessons 2 and 3, again, we're on fast forward, and I want to move us along a little more quickly. So I'm going to ask you to use the strategy of read and paraphrase. but I might even change that word paraphrase to summarize. I think that would be a better word. So what I'll ask you to do is both partners will silently read lesson 2 all the way through, just by yourself. And when you see that both are finished, one of you will summarize it for the other. You'll just kind of walk through and quickly say, well, I think the goal was this, and the teacher's going to open with this, and then the kids will do this, and just give a quick summary. The other person's listening to kind of check in and see if, oh, that's how I understood it too, or, oh, wait a minute, I think this was an important part also. Let's not forget that part. So you just kind of check in with each other around the summary. Then you move to the next lesson, lesson 3, read it silently, and the other person gets to summarize. So it's just reading and summarizing with both lessons. Okay, you won't, no cue from me, just when you both finish with lesson 2, you can move to lesson 3. So what questions do you, we'll go back. What questions do you have about that part? All right, so take just a second to decide who's going to summarize that first lesson, lesson 2, so you'll know that as you're reading. Lesson 2, when you look back at the 5-step model, lesson 2 corresponded to step 2, which means that we really wanted the kids to leave this lesson having a clear understanding of the steps or the critical elements for this skill. So the whole goal of lesson 2 was, at the end of this lesson, do they understand that these are the steps you follow if you are trying to set and achieve a goal? And of course, that SMART goal is not broken down on that poster, so it might make a nice anchor chart, because otherwise you're going to have kids saying, what does that SMART stand for again? So even as I heard our conversations, I went over and quickly threw that up there, because I thought, well, that'll be really helpful if we have a visual reminder of the pieces of a SMART goal. So when you think about, let's just kind of look at lesson 2. Do we feel that the students would leave this lesson having been exposed to the skills cues? Okay, so that part we feel confident about. Were there questions, wonderings, or comments you would like to offer about lesson 2?
We just talked about, or talked a little bit about the opening, like for a 6th grade, not in terms of the big content of the whole lesson, but like the little tweaks, like that prompt as an opening exercise might be a little challenging for a 6th grader to depict and write on. And changing the verbiage or changing the topic, and maybe they don't write a goal on binge drinking. In 8th grade they do. Like to break it down to 6th grade level might just be a change of what you're writing your goal on.
Sugar binge.
Yeah, and how Leslie was talking about, like, we're teaching the 6th, 7th, and 8th this year, and next year if we do it again, they're gonna have this 3 years. When I've done that with like PE, the first time you put badminton rackets in kids' hands, you basically have advanced to like beginning 6th graders for all levels. But the time you've taught it 3 years, then you're really teaching like 8th grade level for those 8th graders. And 6th grade level for your entries, there's more differentiation as the years progress with the skills.
And I want to say again, your point is very valid, and that book will help you, because they have ideas, activities for like the elementary level, where I was like, this activity with a few tweaks would be perfect for high school too. I mean, there are so many ideas in there, so if you're thinking, well, this wouldn't work for a 6th grader, and honestly, as you said, we don't want to repeat the same activities across grades anyway, then I'd flip through that book with a PLC partner or somebody from it, and you know what, let's do this one instead. This will introduce it just as well.
But we also, like, we have semesters in 6th grade and trimesters in 7th. We've got a semester in 6th grade and last semester in 7th. It goes such a gap between seeing them. It lives in them, but it takes a little work to pull it back out again. And so they gain deeper and more understanding with that repeat.
Yes.
This tweak of topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Discussion.
I always tell the kids, we're gonna have the same stuff again their freshman year in college.
Yeah.
It's gonna go a little deeper. You know,
Yeah.
'cause like, we learned some of this back in 6th, I know you did, and then you learn in 9th, and then we start college your freshman year, freshman level class, you know?
That is not an accident.
If you ever counseling as an adult or anything, you'll go back to it.
College words.
A point wanted to bring out, because these ladies reminded me, is that as you're reading through the lessons, there may be a few times when you say to yourself, ooh, I don't think we have that resource, or I'm not sure that's been provided, but that would be helpful. So for example, in lesson 2, it mentions the youth risk data. Well, that's something, if we want to kind of keep a running list on this piece of paper, I know that Donna could give you a link, or she could hook you up with that information in another way if that's something that you needed. But what we want to do is we want to kind of capture what is it, some things that you think you do need with some support through resources that would be helpful. So I'll just kind of youth risk data, I'll abbreviate. Okay. So while I'm standing over here, were there any other resources that off the top of your head you were thinking, oh, we could use that too?
Should say CDC.
CDC. Okay.
Would you mind, while we're saying this, not to get off this, you pulled up the little video. Can we write down some of those that people, or can we talk about that another time? Like, we're doing this now for this material.
Right.
But like, I'd like to have links to, here's some of where we're getting new, Mr. Noodle, or all those things that people might use on a regular basis that others of us don't use.
Okay, yeah.
So you want me to capture that as
videos and
web
we
resources.
asked this morning for community resources. Let's put that on the list. Community partners.
Oh, yeah.
A list of those. And somebody just asked about the trimester and semester scope and sequence. You'll get that. Do you need this SMART goal chart or
I was thinking
a
of
SMART goal
samples of-
form to write a SMART goal or
Samples of
sample
SMART.
SMART goals
Yeah,
for
like-
high school?
Yeah, the students.
Yeah.
Somebody just found here on page 135 for anybody that teaches like 6th grade. There's, instead of it being SMART down the side, it says set goals or spells it. And it's,
Different cues.
Yeah,
It's
different
different
skill
skills.
cues.
And
Yeah.
it seems like if you haven't had goal setting yet in a deep way, it might be very developmentally appropriate
Mhm.
for 6th grade if they're not used to setting goals at all.
Well, and
Whereas
that's
the 7th, 8th could do more of the SMART goals.
I felt like these lessons were tailored to kids that are familiar with working together already. I feel like I will have to be open to, in my classroom, teaching how to work in groups. And so coming up with some mini lessons or some other cooperative learning, other type things before getting all the way into
And just,
Absolutely.
yeah, creating that culture.
creating that culture.
Shifting and looking at your kids, and some 6th grade classes might be ready for the 6th grade material. And just
This is a really great book.
Isn't it? It is.
So what you've brought out as something I wanted to piggyback on is the fact that these lessons were written specifically for the purpose of making sure that the skill development piece was addressed. So like they are there to try to make really transparent and to make this happen for kids, that step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5 all happen. But you will certainly probably see some places where you're like, oh, you know what, I would need to go a little deeper with content here, so I'd have to add another mini lesson around this particular content or issue. Or I need to add lessons on how to talk to each other, how to, those things definitely will come up. And there also is a whole unit coming up on using interpersonal communication, which will really delve into those skills too. So lesson 2, we had one question around just the flow of how it went, and you saw that the teacher used the youth risk data as kind of a tool just to introduce those steps by almost walking the kids through. So it's kind of like, okay, based on this youth data, we identified some needs, and we picked an area, we identified an area, and then the teacher just kind of guided them in thinking about what a SMART goal might look like. The example that was written in the lesson plan right now would not be a SMART goal, obviously. I mean, when you think about avoiding binge drinking, that's not specific, measurable, Yeah, so that by itself, so that would be a teaching point right then to help them think about walking them through, well, what would take this general idea, because that's what kids do, right? That's what adults do. I want to lose weight. Well, that's not going to get me very far. It hasn't for the last 25 years. So how do we take this general idea and make it a SMART goal and bringing in the realistic piece? Because the kids say, okay, well, I've decided, you know, I do most of my binge drinking when I go, we had this conversation over here, but at the bonfires. We have a bonfire every weekend, and that's where I do my binge drinking, is the bonfires. So then they say, so I'm just going to make a goal that says I will not attend any more bonfires. Is that realistic? You have to have a real conversation. So then is it more realistic to say, over the course of the next 4 months, I will attend no more than 4 bonfire parties, and then you talk about, and then check back in. Now that you've gotten that goal met, could you then say, if I attended a bonfire, could you set a new goal? While attending bonfire parties, I will have no more than 1 drink, or whatever. You know, I mean, like, could you then adjust the goals? You can talk about some of those things. But the point of lesson 2 is just to get them to the point of they've had a chance to process what these skills cues are. Then you move to lesson 3. When you got to lesson 3, first of all, let's just take some comments or questions from you. Anything that struck you that you would like to throw out to the table?
I mentioned like when I would have taught any goal setting in the past when I taught health, I would have shown them how to do it and then just like made them apply it themselves. And they didn't have their training wheels off yet, and they would have struggled and floundered. And this one is just the next step. Like now they're creating it with a scenario. So it's taking those little steps to make them successful life skills. And so it's like a lesson that I would have skipped because I was teaching nutrition and throwing in goal setting instead of teaching goal setting. You know, because you have to hurry up. And so if you threw this one out, you can't spend another day.
Yeah. We did goal setting with physical activity.
And here you could take a new topic. You know, so here's your next concept. You could stay with
really
one
develop
concept.
that life
Skill. Because now they're making it with a scenario, which is just like the baby step of the next step. Do it on their own.
And again, I can't stress it enough, those 5 steps are so critical because right now, really, they're not equipped to go do it and make it their own because they just kind of heard these skills cues. And honestly, as a grown group of adults, and you all have so much more expertise in this area than I do, but it's still a lot to process, right? When you see it broken down like this, I'm not ready to go act on this. I need more. I need to really get to delve into this and practice and get some feedback. So lesson 3 is where they get to see you, or it could be someone else. It could be a student. It could be something from a video clip, but they need to see it modeled. And it's going to be more effective if by some chance they can see maybe non-example and example. Again, your book, I love how helpful it is to the teacher. On page 131, I loved when they had a comparison of a not-so-smart goal with a SMART goal. That might be something you can use with your kids because how many of us have said, I'm going to cut down on the number of energy drinks I drink? Well, that's a great goal, but it's not a SMART goal. So when you see the comparison, it helps you to make it more concrete. I just kind of brainstormed how I might do this with my kids if I were modeling, and I thought about showing them. This is not professionally done. This was thrown together, guys, but it could be prettier in the classroom. But I thought about my husband, if I may brag on him for just a moment. He's a really good runner. He coaches cross country at a high school, and he has run the mini marathon since he was about 15, and he usually finishes in the top 100. He's a really good runner. So as this great runner, he still decided that he wanted to enhance one of his health skills, one of his health goals of running by taking on a new challenge. He decided he was going to run a 3-day, 60-mile trail run. He's not a trail run guy. He's a flat runner, right? So if I could throw this up in front of the kids and say, okay, so this was my husband's goal. Successfully compete in the Chattanooga Trail Run. Is that a SMART goal?
No.
Why? Where does it fall down? It's not measurable.
The measure of success.
Yeah, what does successfully mean? What does that mean? When is it? How long does he have? I mean, this right here does not stand up. And so I could model for them by thinking through. That's the challenging part. They need to see you struggle with it a little bit. Okay, so what does successfully mean? Well, for him, he really wanted to complete each day within the cutoff. So you had to do 18 miles in 3.5 hours. The next day you had to do 20 miles in 3.5 hours. The next day you had to do 22 and then 20 because the last day was tough with lots of rock climbing. So the last day was only 20 miles, only. But you had to do it in 4 hours. So he wanted to complete a 3-day, 60-mile trail run within the cutoff time for each day and also without injury. Now, is that more specific? Is it measurable? Can you say yes or no, did or did not? Yes. Now, the time-based part, she signed up for this in December, and so it was June. It was Father's Day weekend. So by June, or within the next 6 months, I will, right? So now we have a time-based. Is it realistic? For him, it was. With his history, it was.
But if you hadn't done before.
Which is the next piece. That's the next piece. So adjustable, yeah. If he had decided, like if something had happened, if something had come up and he said, you know what, it is not realistic, I can do it in the cutoff time, but I can just say I'm going to complete it, I'm going to do it, he could have adjusted that. Or he could have said, he had something come up, an injury, whatever, I'm going to have to put this off and I'm going to make it next year, I'm going to train for a year instead of 6 months. He could have adjusted that. So after walking the kids through, writing it up on the board so they can see how I've got those smart pieces, then I would do what you did. I would say, okay, you know what? I also would like to be more physically fit. And I feel like running would be really good for me, and I think it would increase my health. I would like to have a goal around running too. So my history is that in my entire life, I've never run more than a mile at one time. So this nice goal is already written up. I'm just going to take his. Kids, would this work? No. Why not? And then they could start talking about it. And then I could even go into, so for me, what would be a realistic SMART goal? And we could do that. So that the modeling piece, just showing them the process. And I would follow it through. I wouldn't just stop at the SMART goal because that's only this skill cue. I would go on through as I would make sure they saw me that I modeled it on through. Because when my husband got to that point, then his plan, his strategies we could talk about. I'm going to have a set of workouts where I increase my distance and the challenge with, trails and rocks or whatever. I'm going to do this with nutrition. I'm going to do this, whatever. So that's the modeling piece.
Was he successful?
He's amazing. He's so good.
Look at her.
He finished 17th.
Are you his year?
Yes, he finished 17th.
Congratulations.
He did great.
That's awesome.
Oldham County High School. Yeah, he's been there I don't know how many years. Okay, so that was lesson 3. What else about lesson 3 might you want to talk about or ask?
How detailed are these scenarios supposed to be? Like, what are they supposed to include? That kind of thing.
Okay, so you're referencing on the second page, number 1 under work time, and that was something we did not throw together for you. So that it might be something that we jot up there as a resource you would like to have, or it might be something where one of you creates it and then shares with everybody else. It might be as simple as that. But I think it could be simple. I think it could be like 2 paragraphs. One paragraph that talks about Sally, who did blah, 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 and clearly ended up using all of the skills cues. And then one scenario that talks about whoever, and you see where some steps were missed. And then they have to kind of analyze and think about.
So we're missing
1 second.
some stuff
Does everyone have a lesson 5 and setting and achieving goals?
I have 5.
We're missing.
I didn't have 5.
It's hard to get good help. Carrie's been on vacation. No, which one do you miss?
Lesson 5 and
The summative evaluation.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have.
And this binder doesn't have this in it.
I don't know about anybody else.
well, where's the other binders?
Yeah, can we trade binders, or do we need to pull out what we need, or?
You know what, let's do this so we don't spend a lot of time. I'll get a piece of paper down, write what you need, and I'll pull it for you by the end,
How would I
okay?
mark it in this one if it's complete?
Put
put a post-it
Yeah,
note.
with what-
There you go, we'll pass the
How many
binder, you put a post-it note with your name on what page you need, and I'll get it to you.
Can we right now go through what should be in?
Yeah,
Because
I
you don't
don't
have
know
it,
what
you
it's
don't
supposed to
know.
be.
It's real obvious.
How many
You
people need
always-
lesson five?
It'll
So
say
far we're
lesson
down.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then there's always that cue sheet,
Then there's
Does anyone
these
else need
things.
lesson
6
And
and
then I
8,
go
and
to
then all the
chapter 8.
worksheets.
6 and 8.
Oh, you
Does
know
everyone have
what?
5?
This is, it's
I have
chapter
5.
8 in the book, but it's goal setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, she's got chapter
Lesson
5.
five for unit 1.
That's for, it's supposed to be for analyzing. Okay.
I think everything's.
Okay,
This
well,
binder
you
has
have
everything.
this.
You know what?
Unit
It's
1, subject evaluation.
analyzing,
Yeah, you got that.
analyzing.
And then after that was-
8 is chapter 5. All right, we're gonna pass the binder around, put a post-it note on it if we
I got
if you're
tallies.
missing a page, and I'll get it to you by the end. All right.
I got chapter 5 back here.
There you go. And I got this back.
You got that?
Both in the back?
No, we
There.
don't.
So
That was in the one.
So both in the back.
I'm looking at the time, and I know that we need to move, so I'm gonna slide ahead just a tiny bit. I'll go back and pick up that other slide in just a minute. But I think we need our next stretch break. So I'm gonna ask Carrie
All right,
if she will jump in here.
absolutely.
Stretch, stretch.
Stretch, stretch.
Remember all this snow guy?
Oh man, I thought she was busting out a speaker. I thought we was.
Really go for it.
Talk about a guy that needs to work on his decision making.
I had to do that.
You're a mess. All right, this is another activity that you could do with your kiddos, especially like the first day you have them, or at least the first week. It's called Would You Rather? And it's really just getting people moving around. So let's make that corner over there. Would you rather watch sports on TV during your free time? That corner will be, would you rather watch a TV show or series during your free time? And how about over here would be, would you rather
Hallmark Channel.
yeah, watch a movie, like a movie? Or over here, would you rather just play on your phone during your free time? All right, so phone, that is
Series.
T-
Series in like the news.
TV series, or the new, yeah, sure. That is a sports, and then this is movie. So go where you would prefer. During your free time, what would you rather do?
You have to pick one of them?
Yeah, you gotta pick one of those. Yeah.
Give me Pinterest. I'm on it.
Give me one.
And I don't ever wanna watch the news. Really?
Everyone to watch the, are you a news junkie?
I just,
Yeah.
you know, at 5, 6, you're gonna catch it for the day.
Now, you might want to change it up a little bit for your kiddos, but it's just something to get to know them a bit. Okay, so why don't you just talk amongst yourself? What is your favorite thing to watch or do? What's your
Just like, God, it makes a series.
Yeah. Do you watch Netflix? Oh, yeah. It's so funny because I like refused to watch Breaking Bad for a long time. I'm like, I'm not watching that. I'm not watching. And then it was like once I started going.
I never have. I like Carly. I had one every other whatever. Close first every very fun on the
I know. Yep.
Now I love her.
That's really my new last fight. I was watching some
And for the legend right now, I read the same story the last 3 nights.
I'm not sure that was at all.
All right, let's move on to the next Would You Rather. And just stay where you are until I give you the selections. So when you are physically active, would you rather, how about over here, walk and jog? Over there, ride your bike. Over there, swimming. or over here, any other team sport, when you are physically active.
What's that one over there?
This one is walker jog. Walker jog, bike, swim, or any other team sport. All right, just do a little talk, elbow share with your partner, what your favorite specific.
My partner's invisible.
You're invisible. You're swimming alone. You're swimming alone.
Any and all. I like the new section.
And I would join you, but I'm not a swimmer. I can't remember.
Strand.
No, I do like water aerobics though.
That was Sunday, and I got started.
I like the
Early church,
Right.
and I didn't get out there on the path till probably about 10:30. And it was real, that Sunday was really hot, I didn't get done till about 2:30. That was not a good decision. I did 40, 40 went out back 42 miles. And, the time wasn't bad, but it wasn't a good time of day to do that. That was not very smart. I was planning on getting out there by 9:30, and then I said, well, I need to go to church. I need to go to church Saturday, so whatever, I'll be all right. And it just got really, and it got humid Sunday. It wasn't a good decision. If you do out and back, and you get about 40 miles, that's not.
All right, who has off the top of your head something you might ask your students on the first day you do this activity? Would you rather what? Do you think your students would be interested? Okay, food, like what would you like to eat? Okay, all
What would you rather do with your free time this summer? Schedule anything, I'm just thinking of things we can ask them. Favorite class?
right. Our favorite class?
Favorite social media app?
Oh, that's a really good one.
I've always done just two.
Say again.
Two choices.
Two choices. That way there's not a lone, we've had 2 lone wolves, so yeah, that, which I guess you would have more people, so maybe it would
You
be.
can ask them like, what animal would you rather have as a pet? And you can throw all kinds of options in there.
Like
All
a
right.
rat.
Yeah,
So, just real simple, you would rather,
Yeah.
and that could even be something, you could do this at the beginning of each unit to get a feel for what they might wanna take it, where they wanna take it.
Like you were saying, like, but what is, and then you could use something like this to figure out which area you wanna focus on in your
Skills.
assessing and analyzing and whatnot.
Alright.
Or this topic here is to focus on, would you rather learn about nutrition or diseases?
Yeah.
And then you could target your, some of your lessons more in those terms.
And in process of elimination, what you didn't cover with
You're gonna
your choice, you're gonna get to, yeah.
But they feel they have money.
That's would you rather? So again, just because we're, we want to make sure that with this first unit, we are very, very, very transparent, just to kind of review. So we had lesson number 1 where we just got them hooked, gave them the so what, why is goal setting important, told them what goal setting is, and here's what you're going to accomplish by the end of this unit. These are your educational outcomes. We moved into the second lesson, and we went into, I want you to leave this lesson really understanding what the skills cues are for goal setting and see it within a context that is relevant to your life in some way. Then we moved into that lesson 3 where they got to see it demonstrated. You get to see somebody modeling as they work through the process of setting a goal themselves and then talking you through how they would implement it with their plans and strategies and how they would reflect on it. So you get to see the skills cues, the way that this person would lay it out. And then you moved into the 2 lessons that you just now read, and what you saw was that both of them related to the same skill cue. They were both around, excuse me, I'm so sorry. They were both related to the same step, step 4, which is practicing. So it took 2 lessons to set them up, because the first one was having them do this needs assessment that had them think about all these dimensions and domains of health.
and then using that to move them into actually trying to set their goal. So that's just kind of, you see the flow of how that's gone. We haven't yet gotten to step 5, which will be that performance assessment, which is coming up. So when you looked at lessons 4 and 5, what comments or questions came to your mind?
Just again, like, would 6th graders be ready for 7 dimensions of health?
Or would you want to modify that for them?
To the old traditional 3. And then where some of those lie within the 3 broad.
What's on your wheel up there? That was actually something that I just pulled
That's all 7
from
of them there,
the
yeah.
graphic, but I do believe it matches the web resource that you have. Did you all find that when you flipped back a few pages into, it's right after the 6th grade middle school version of the poster?
Yes, it just looks like you have a lot of details underneath each of your words.
Yeah.
It's a
She
wheel.
found it just on the web.
Yeah, I just found it on the web. And actually, that was one of the thoughts is, there was a note, I think, at the end of the lesson that said your students may need support if they don't remember what those dimensions are.
They
And
might
so,
need a little mini lesson on the dimensions.
yeah, yeah.
You know what, just one word of caution, that word spiritual
Oh,
has
that's
caused
on there?
major problems in schools. Even though spiritual is not defined as religious, and there's a very real distinction. I mean, the Civil Liberties Union folks have come after us for using the word
But you can-
spiritual, so I'm
Yes,
just saying,
since
be careful.
You can phrase that.
Yes.
I forget.
But if you're
I mean,
pulling
there's a
off
really
a
good phrase.
standard chart, I'm just
What
advising you.
What do you think's causing the most problems, using it or not using
using it,
it? Oh, really?
yes.
I show
That'd
it.
be debatable.
Yeah, I mean, I put it up there and I say, this is what you'll find when you research this. I said, the spiritual to me, applies, it's a personal choice for people, so we won't really address it in class, but I want you to know
But
that
it
it's
doesn't
part
have to
of.
be in the sense towards God.
No,
can be-
exactly.
It doesn't, but if you-
to anything that you think is greater than themselves.
Yeah, but the problem is if you do that and somebody does believe wholly in God, then they complain because you
Just
just
be
talk
careful.
about
Okay?
the Indian life or the sky life or nature life or whatever.
But you can, they address all
I
that.
address it, like I say, this is a personal choice, so we won't really use it in class, but, feel free to include it in whatever you're working on, but this is how we'll handle it here.
If you really, I know like we just got the latest, not latest, but anyways, textbook, really, it only gives you 3. Social, physical,
Emotional,
mental,
mental,
yeah,
emotional.
and then, and which when I read this, you were just asking questions about it, I think it's really, I was just talking about this part, everything, health is physical, that's what we always go to. So I think it'd be great if we had some kids, start telling us about some of their emotional and mental goals instead.
Gosh, that's
Because
huge.
there's so many
Oh,
that talk about the
socially
suicide
emotional
prevention,
health.
if
And
they
your-
could deal with bullying and.
These scenarios are about social emotional.
Oh, good, instead,
in the book
okay.
for 3rd,
Yes,
5th, and
yes.
6th grade.
Because that would be so much.
You absolutely should be doing social and emotional. I was just talking about the
Dispositions.
word spiritual, okay?
Yeah,
I don't wanna get hung up.
yeah, just introducing the 3.
So we have a cross on the board and the word spiritual, so we're just, somebody's hating us right now.
So your point, what we've basically established is 2 ideas. One is just to always be conscious of your, your audience and your phrasing, so that you can avoid yourself getting into an issue. But the other is that you can modify this. I mean, this is just a resource.
Yeah.
So, for example, looking at that wheel of wellness, it may be that you decide with your 6th graders you only put 4 of the domains, or however many. It may be that you want to make this look prettier, and you put it into an actual wheel, and whatever, and put ideas of what might be encompassed in each of those domains, so that the reference is right there. That's obviously up to you. But the main idea is simply this is one tool that would be a needs assessment that would cause the kids to think about health in a broader context than just one area. And it talks about always, the teacher models. It would only take a second, but when the teacher would be setting them up to go into that activity, taking just a minute and saying, so for example, when I look at this with my wheel of wellness, in the physical category, I might write, a lack of. I don't think I'm getting enough physical activity during the work week because I tend to sit a lot at work, and so I'm going to put a lack here, and then maybe down here I put something that does fit, so that you kind of model how it could look a few different ways, hit a couple different categories, so they know how they're going to do that procedure that activity, and then they can start working on it. So that was a comment that related to lesson 4. Do we have any other comments about lesson 4, or are we ready to move to lesson 5? Okay, lesson 5. Any notes or observations we want to make about this one?
I think we might need actual questions with each little wheel category, only because if I hand them like something that's in here, they're gonna jot a few words down in the section and be done with it in like 2 minutes.
Okay. So that is an idea. Then you're talking about that wheel of wellness, and maybe putting in some prompting questions.
Yeah.
You're also bringing out the idea that obviously if we can show kids a model of one that's filled out well, that might also help them to see what it might look like. Yeah.
I got another question before we move on into this one. Like I'm noticing, like on this, like I like the activities in it. As far as like, I mean, like it seems like we're giving them definitely a skill activity to help build on what they're learning. Getting to the assessment part, so like, is this moving away from, I guess, like traditional ways of testing? Like, are we using these type of activities to, like, for instance, say they had to do a, come up like with a SMART, like the SMART goal. So could that be used as an assessment now instead of making a multiple choice test and saying, okay, this is, considered mastery for them for this particular activity during this skill portion of this unit?
That's their summative, right? Creating their own.
Well, yeah, the summative we're going to read in just a second, and it's the performance assessment where they actually show that they followed the whole process with goal setting, all the skills cues. But you're asking, could there be like an assessment grade, like a little quiz grade about this one piece of this skill? Can the kids write an effective SMART goal? That could be an assessment grade, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think that's your student growth goal. That's what I would make, it's your student growth
And
goal.
Lorenzo, that's why that's up there. I know we need to talk about this more, but in summary, yes, if you're gonna not just be teaching knowledge, which is easily measured on a multiple choice pen and paper pencil test. Remember that was one of those 2 assessment things in a traditional classroom and in a skills space. Then you have to be assessing if they can do the skills. So in summary, the assessments should look very different. Yes. And I know that needs more work than that simple answer, and I know that's something we can work on together or develop and share or whatever. So, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I ask them, I don't mind, I mean, I can do that, I mean,
I know.
it's just that I don't, like, I guess if I'm being evaluated, like, if they're looking for a specific assessment measurement versus, like, what we're using here, I mean, I don't know how that would work out if they assess me saying.
Are you concerned your administrators seeing?
Again, the evaluation process, like when somebody comes to my room, they wanna see something, they wanna see, that's my concern. I have no problem with building it, doing it this way. It's just like traditionally, like most classrooms operate, for instance, like core content, I mean, they're gonna have standardized stuff, and then they expect us to have our stuff labeled in somewhat the way they do it. And it's just like.
But you know what, the way we're all doing it is changing. I mean, Marty Polio, I can tell you, would rather you have a performance assessment than a content knowledge level 1 assessment. So actually, you're gonna be the one doing the right thing, even if the administrator coming into your room doesn't know it.
Donna, Benton.
And seriously, I know that we have a lot of education to do with school administrators and people that are observing you and evaluating, and that's on my wheelhouse that we've got to do that.
The other thing is, do you assess students, or do they just formative assessments on their terms and vocabulary and building their rich language? Because that's a big part of bridging these gaps. And I know in elementary school, like the number of words that a child knows, it comes from a economically stable home and the language they develop compared to children that come from higher stress homes, and building that vocabulary. And so there's vocabulary that comes up that sometimes children don't know at all. You just do like some little word work, or you don't even worry about it because it's just level 1.
I'm going to offer one comment, and then I'm going to pass this to you. I'm just going to say that the authors do not speak to what you can or can't do. They are simply saying, if we want to develop the skills within these students, here are the steps to follow. And so the lessons are showing you, really focused in on how are we going to develop these skills. So I don't think the authors ever say, don't work on vocabulary. They're focused in on skill development. So I'll let Donna speak to that question. But the other piece I'll say is, if I understand correctly, you're thinking about those pieces like alignment with, across the school, our administrators want us to be doing assessments that align with how these kids will be assessed on a standardized test. Well, there's nothing here that says a kid can't write a constructive response. I mean, you know, I can give a multiple choice question that assesses whether or not they understand SMART goals or decision-making process, or whether or not this was a health-enhancing behavior that a kid chose. I mean, I think you can still use assessment methods that perfectly align with what other people in your building are doing, but the performance assessments of the skill are going to be there too, because that's how they're going to show you they got that skill, right? So which would you want to add there, Donna?
If nothing, I think yes and. So I don't have a problem with what you just said, but I heard a little bit of art, and maybe I didn't hear you right, and so we'll practice our communication skills here right now. I heard a little bit, not only from you, but people today saying administrators are going to come into my building and they're going to want to see that I'm doing, you know, multiple choice testing, vocabulary, you know, blah, 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 blah. And really so we should be like that. But really, I think the paradigm shift is changing, and they should move from that to where we're going, which is not exclusive of that, but certainly performance assessing skills and assessing performance.
Yeah, I mean, I know they come in and they have like this, like literally like a binder like this, and they're going through checking off on all these points, and it's just like sometimes they're in there for like maybe 15 minutes, maybe 10, maybe 30. But I mean, to me, it seems like it's just kind of hard to really find all that stuff in a certain amount of time, because I mean, you may do it in other parts of the lesson, but they may see it, they may not. They just base everything off of the time frame that they were in your classroom.
Okay, and I'm going to put on mine, because I know we have to keep going, but I'm so glad you raised this. It's so crucial, and it reinforces for me something that has to go on my to-do list, which is I've got a lot of work to do around educating your evaluators, your principals, your assistant, whoever's observing you, because first of all, when they do walkthroughs or whatever, they need to know what they're looking for. You know, we have PE principals that think if the kids are playing dodgeball, it's perfectly wonderful if they're, you know. So we got a lot of work to do with administrators about what this looks like. Plus, I want them to know, you know, that one teacher voice said, we're going to need leadership support. So I also want to tell them why I need you guys on goal days, or why they have to provide you time and or we have to provide you money to come to PLCs, okay? If this is going to really take root, if they're serious about deeper learning, then we got to make this happen. So there's a lot of work to do in terms of education and communication, and I'm committed to doing it. And I think we're going to get backup from the chief academic officer. I really do. She knows about this because a lot of what we're doing was developed in her training. She is like over the moon. She wanted to come today. She said, you are further along than anybody else in this district. And she wanted to come today to watch it, but she couldn't. So I told her we were taping it. So don't worry, we're sitting pretty. We just have to get everybody communicated with and educated. Okay? So that helps. And we need more work to do around assessments. I get that.
So I know we need a break. I'm going to put us on fast forward. Just really quickly, let's just look at the Progress Monitoring Summative Evaluation sheet together. I'm going to just kind of talk us through this one very quickly so we can get to a break, and then we're going to come back and we will look at units 2 and 3 in a much quicker fashion. But when you left off unit 4, the students had used you had two different tools you could look at that would guide them to set a goal and following all the steps of the skills cues. So you had two different references, resources you could have looked at. You can pick one, you can modify, blend them together, but you just want some kind of tool that helped them to set one, and they turned it in so that the teacher can give feedback and go, oh gosh, we're missing a skill cue here, or you need a little help with your SMART goal. So there's feedback and approval before they say, this is it, this is the one I'm implementing. So they go off and they are now implementing this goal. And it talks about when you give the kids the assignment, they need to know everything up front. They need to know the expectations and when is it due and how is it going to be graded and is the rubric going to be used? If so, what does it look like? If there's a model, anytime we can give them a model, that's helpful if there happens to be one. But some of the points here is it talks about adjust is a great thing for people to do. So letting the kids know it's not a failure if they realize they reflect and that didn't work. Then at these check-ins over the course of our semester, then you can adjust. Part of their grade is based on, actually all of their grade is based on following the process and the depth of reflection, because it's not about whether or not you met your goal. That's not what it's about. So then you have that progress monitoring note, which goes back to what was said very early on. What will be your routine for checking in? And there are some ideas listed there. Maybe you do something every Friday, or maybe there's a once a month journal, or maybe there's blogging, whatever it might be. And there's feedback, checking in, formatively assessing along the way so that it doesn't, a kid doesn't come up at the end of the term and all of a sudden we realize they weren't working on it at all. Like, these check-ins will ensure that it's happening and they're getting support and feedback along the way. And then we have the summative evaluation and teacher evaluation of the skill. We actually put this into the check-in piece where it's due. Could fit very nicely into Unit 6, Practicing Health Enhancing Behaviors, because that final evaluation and reflection on how they did with their goal could piggyback right into that skill that they're going to be moving into there of practicing health enhancing behaviors. So that would be a great place to make your deadline. And then again, they are only graded on the process, not on whether or not they achieved the goal, and you have some reflective questions you might even include to make sure that they are doing that deep reflection when they consider how it went, look back over their entire process. Okay? So you've got that in front of you. Obviously, you can read it at your own leisure, but I know we need a break. So let's take 15 minutes. I can't find my break slide, but let's take 15 minutes. We'll come back and pick up a quick check-in on the agenda. Obviously, so far we've only had a chance to look at the lessons and the first unit. So we want to make a point to get into those units 2 and 3. But a quick word first about the curriculum big picture before we go to that. Oh, please don't tell me that I want to do that. All right, there we go. So the unit order. It was not, what's the word?
Arbitrary.
Thank you, nice word. It was not arbitrary the way these were laid out. The very first page, the typewritten page that you see at the beginning of your binder, gives you a suggested order for the units, and that comes directly from, first of all, Sarah Beans and Holly Alperin. They gave a justification. When you read through the textbook, if you've not already, you're going to see where they tell you this one really needs to come early because it comes back again and again, and you're going to build on it, and you're going to refer back to this skill the entire time that you're going through your course. Or they'll justify this one needs to follow this one because it builds on it. So they give a rationale for their order. And so that was the first thing that was considered. And then the second thing was, now that we have their recommendations, based on knowledge of students and some of the data and the survey results that came in, what are some other factors that might influence where the units are placed? So for example, a lot of conversation was had about the fact that students need to know how to talk respectfully to each other and work respectfully with each other, and perhaps that needs to come earlier so they can then use those skills throughout their class. So decisions like that are what led to that recommended order. And again, the teacher can then make connections between them. Remember this skill? Now you bring it back up as you move through your other skills. Importance of the content, just want to emphasize again, as you read through the units and the lessons, there will be times when you're saying, well, I really need to go deeper with this content piece right here or this topic right here. And that can certainly be inserted when it fits naturally. These lessons are really focused in on making sure that those steps of skill development are there. There may need to be some content added, but I hope that you're already seeing that it is there too. I mean, you already see where it's coming in. The functional knowledge piece is key. What do they need to know to really make meaning and to get this? And then, of course, we've already actually delved into those documents and resources quite a bit, so I'm going to move off of that one. Unit 2, in the recommended order, is accessing valid and reliable information products and services, because this is a skill the kids do use and need for everything. So to do this exploration of the lessons in a quicker version, I'm going to ask us to do this. Remember, the unit overview frames everything. It is really important. So I'm going to ask us all to pause for 5 silent minutes so that we can all read the unit overview together, and then we'll move on to the next piece. Has the 5-step model broken down for this particular skill, and it is a duplicate of what you'll find in your book on page 62, so it's the same information. I will point out, you'll see this when you start to look at the lessons, that this chapter in the book offers some other very nice charts and resources, reference tables that are helpful as you teach this. So in case you want to take a moment to flip there, that might be helpful. To expose ourselves to this and see the flow, but in a very quick way, we're going to do a jigsaw. So what I'm going to ask us to do is to just divide up the lessons. So if you 2 ladies would take lesson 1, and you 2 ladies would take lesson 2, and then the gentlemen take lesson 3, and then the next 2 ladies take lesson 4, and you 2, actually, let me see if we have a lesson 5.
Yeah, there are 6, I think.
Okay, so you guys go ahead and take, well, can we split it up? Can one of you take 5 and one of you take 6? And here's what you're going to be keeping in mind, please, as you do this. When we go to share, we are going to give our colleagues the big picture of how this will flow, so that when you share, you're going to kind of walk them through very quickly. Here's what this lesson is designed to do. Here's how it would flow, just the important summary, so that they would then see how the lessons build. So go ahead, please take a few minutes to read your lesson and think about what you're going to have to share. Remembering, of course, that you have all of the material and you can read it carefully later when you have more time, and that our purpose right now is just to kind of give us the big picture in a quick fashion. I'm going to ask us to go ahead and jump right in, because I'm watching our time. So these ladies read lesson 1. If you guys just kind of piggyback, one can start talking and the other can jump in, but just briefly share with the table, please, how we see, how does lesson 1 flow, please?
Okay, the big picture from lesson 1 is pulling on the students' prior information about valid and reliable information and defining those 2 terms. And I think it would be good to have an anchor chart to have those written up there. And then they do an activity where they turn and talk about a resource that they would use and examples of resources that they would not use. And then back to the teacher to explain the importance of the unit, to give it that relevance, and then get into the terms of health information, health product, health service, and those definitions can be put on an anchor chart. And then the actual work time that the students will do, they'll have an envelope that has index cards, similar to what we did, and they categorize using some of the page 64 in the book.
What would you add anything?
They talk about first, like, having them categorize it before you actually give them the definitions of the 3 categories, and then so then they'll have a little bit of a struggle in defining them and having them see if they need to fix and correct it.
Resort after they have those definitions.
Yep.
Okay.
And just building those foundations.
All right, so we saw step one there, we introduced them to the skill, the relevance you mentioned, and then getting them, the educational outcomes, getting them to play with those terms a little bit too, okay? Lesson 2, ladies.
It was more about presenting the actual skills, the skill cues, the word access, or for the younger ones at 6, they used race, and it's on page 68. Like the opening started out, it kind of piggybacked what they did the day before, just talking about information that they've looked up, and then if it was beneficial or not, talking to a partner. And then it's more,
The teacher brings the product in.
yeah, they focus on a specific product and work on it together using access before they actually go into the other lessons of where they can do it on their own, or their own items, their own products.
And then during the work time, they're gonna now, I was probably more,
Oh, yeah.
that's as far as I got too. So I read and knew what you read and knew. But I'm guessing now is where they're actually going to look for a product, a service, or some information, and they're gonna use access also with their anchor chart.
Sorry, you guys didn't have enough time to make it through. Yeah, the kids wrote about, during their warm-up, they thought about a time that they had to actually access some kind of product or resource or piece of information, and they talk about, was it good, was it not good? And now that the teacher has introduced the skills cues, the teacher says, go back to whatever it was you wrote about in your warm-up, whatever product or piece of information or whatever you were thinking about, and the access cues are written down the side of the paper. Think about, did you use those skills cues when you were deciding whether that was a good product or not? Which ones did you? Which ones didn't you? So they get to kind of be exposed to the skills cues in relation to their own experience. Does that make sense? Okay.
And then when the teacher brings in the model of a product, they said it could be physical, of course not. Are we supposed to go through then, is it just, we don't know if it's gonna be a good product or not, we're just gonna kinda go through it and accent?
Yeah, I think the teacher can pick.
Okay.
You know, you can bring something from your own medicine cabinet
Right.
and, you
It's
know.
not
or-
really-
But
Or maybe
water
two.
or,
Yeah.
Maybe you can bring two, one that is and one that's not.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the students, of course, now gonna have their chance to do the exact same thing the proper way using skills.
So yet again, we're thinking about those 5-step model. The first one, introducing, getting them on board, the so what, why do you care, and you know, helping them see the educational outcomes. And now we've introduced them to the skills cues.
I do like that reflection question though, which of the skill cues of the ACTPSS is most familiar and natural? Because I think we all, when we look for a product or assess information, you know, there's one that sticks out more than the other for us.
Thank you. Lesson 3.
All right, just, if you give them a health situation that requires some type of service, that's what you give them. You give them several situations that require service, and then they have to determine what is the correct service and how valid is the service using the access skill cues. And then they,
Yeah, just to add on to that, you know, like I guess you'd open up by giving them questions or information about certain things that would require them to go see a doctor or go request services. I mean, maybe you throw something out there, injuries or bug bites or snake bites or breaks or what, I don't know, but there would be a bunch of stuff that's thrown out there. But you'd also, I guess, refer back to, I guess, is this the standard or the access card? And they would refer back to that, and they would have to, there's an assignment here where they would have to evaluate certain health services, like I guess either the teacher or the students would go find 3 to 5 different types of services that could run. They had to evaluate it. They would have to, you know, look at it and analyze to see if this is good or if it's not good based off what they see on the website or what they see from the information that they find. That's how it is.
So a quick note, because we're doing this the fast forward version, it's not as easy to see, but it's tricky for the kids because there are 3 different pieces here: products, services, information. Most of the kids are very familiar with information. They have not been as exposed to products and services in some cases, some students. So some of the lessons kind of hone in on different aspects of that. Like one might really get into health services, one might really get into products, you know, so you're hearing that as people are sharing. And the other thing I should say is, I believe the teacher model and the familiarizing with the skill cues both came in your lesson, right? So we're already kind of in the practice stage with what you gentlemen just shared. So
I noticed too, like, it's something like most of the stuff, I guess it's like you said, I don't know if you said it earlier, but like the build on page, everything kind of connects a little bit, and it's an ongoing process where there's kind of, every day they've got their prior knowledge because that's something that they've done, and they're reconnecting almost daily, whatever they're doing, but something from a previous lesson.
So that they have that continuity in the flow. Yeah, great. Lesson 4.
So I'm gonna jump in front of you guys because lesson 6 in the thing says the ideal placement would be after lesson 3.
Oh, okay.
So, this lesson is to get a guest speaker or health services fair, because like you just said, the kids are very exposed to the information, but maybe not so exposed to the products or services. So this is where we have the opportunity to bring products or services to the kids so that they can determine what is their level of comfort with accessing these people and having conversations with them. They started the lesson, actually, I know every time that I've ever done a health fair or had a guest speaker, I've given it to them immediately, but this lesson has us tie in it still has us frame the lesson, does a warm-up, then the guest speaker gets to present, and then at the end, we close it back down and do a sharing reflection or a journal. So, so that's it.
Yeah, thank you. And if I recall, it kind of offers the opportunity, maybe it's a guest speaker, maybe it's a panel, maybe it's stations.
Yeah,
yeah.
There's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, you could just bring in like a speaker that provides a health service and talk about their health service, and then the class would discuss if it was.
It offers, yeah. And
credible.
well, I think the assumption
or how
is.
they promote themselves as credible, things like that, the way.
I think the focus there, I think we kind of would establish with the kids that we're bringing in a valid and reliable source. The piece that the book also brings up is that kids don't know how to access it. The title of the skills cue is Accessing Valid and Reliable, and sometimes they can tell you this is credible or it's not, this is valid, this is not, but they don't know how to get it. Like maybe this is a great, the health clinic, okay, the health clinic's great. How do I go there? When do I go there? What would I ask? How would I advocate for myself? They don't know some of those things. So in this case, part of the focus would also be just accessing. Okay, here's somebody here who's a health service provider. What do I ask them? What would we do if we went into your place of business? How would we find out where you're located? Just some of those pieces too. So,
What I was thinking is ideally, I could get some of those community partners and videotape them and have that for you all. Instead of you trying to bring in somebody to, 6 classes a day, whatever. So let me put that on my.
Oh, Donna, that would be awesome.
Wouldn't that be? Yeah. Okay.
so now we're back to lesson 4.
So lesson 4 is they broke down healthcare products. Again, using the access clues to look specifically at products. So I think 3, 4, and 5 broken out services and products and information.
Yes, absolutely. You just nailed that. Anything you'd want to add?
I kind of like the opening where the teachers to give them a product that was advertised as something that was wonderful and great for your health, and advertised for a long time, and then when more research was done, and found out that the product was actually not good for your health, and so for those
cookies and Diet Coke.
yeah, so for those kids to, I think that would be a very fun,
Apple cider vinegar.
What'd you say?
Apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
The cure-all for everything.
Right. So I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
I've heard that like 3 times this summer, as you say that one. Well, it's spring, summer.
Well, lesson 5 is the health information. So like what is reliable and valid, it kind of goes back to that. And they had it was a really good way of starting to have them come up with questions that you or another team might have, that you would wanna find that information out. So then they have to research it, they had to find, like 2 different websites, and then you had to decide was one or both valid and reliable or both. And then it goes on to talk a little bit about, like at the end, to kind of reflect the .gov, .edu, .org, like of course being, you should be able to trust them, you know, versus a blog, it says, or someone who's writing something like for their own agenda. You know, anybody can have a .com, so.
And I believe like in this unit, you could get a lot of discussion on, you know, the students are aware, we talked about the funding that comes in. And like, my doctor will say, well, there's no research that states cranberry juice will cure a bladder infection, but it's because no one's gonna fund the research. But it took care of mine once, you're like, there's no research that apple cider vinegar is gonna cure all, because who's gonna fund that research, what money, but if it's a pharmaceutical, and they're gonna get selling the pharmaceutical, there's no research behind it. So it could,
Very relevant to today.
yes, cause a lot of discussion.
Especially now, cause the kids use Google, and I don't know if you've noticed, but within the last year, the ads push to the top now. So, I mean, like that's something, cause a lot of people, they click the first thing, cause they think it's the most relevant, but it's not.
Scroll
Now you
through,
have to
find
scroll
stuff,
through
yeah.
and really do some investigating, because the ads are popping up.
There's a setting you can go in and change.
They change it.
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
You should Google that.
I'm one.
Yeah, Google it.
Yeah, that's
So we started, lesson 1 started with piggybacking on the students' background knowledge, their prior knowledge about, they've heard about valid and reliable sources, but it's probably always been in the context of research. They've probably talked about it in ELA or when they were researching something in whatever content class. And of course your focus is, how are you accessing valid and reliable resources, products, information, or services to enhance your health, to take care of yourself or others. And so that's that nice angle, and it's kind of nice that it comes back again there at the end when you're thinking about, okay, all this information is out here, but how do we make sure that this is actually going to be positive for my health? And so the last piece, I didn't give this to any of you guys, so I'm going to briefly share that the performance task, you'd already seen it previewed when you read the unit overview, but it is simply to ask the students now, remember we want to try to make it relevant, take it outside the classroom, so they choose one relevant health issue for themselves, one topic that is relevant to them in whatever way it might be, whether it's their own or a family member or some other connection they might have to it, and then they are assigned to go find one valid and reliable piece of information related that could help them address this health topic, one service, one health service, and one health product. And to get to that accessing piece, you could add that component of prove that you accessed one of them. You know, if it's, you know, show me the picture that says you actually went to that health clinic and you knew how to get there and you knew how to find what you needed there.
Now they're good at
Or,
selfies.
yeah, exactly. Or bring me the product if it's one you're going to use anyway, to show me that you knew how to access it. So that could be a piece to make it a little bit more real world if you wanted to add that. And then of course the notes about evaluating and assigning the task are the same, you know, telling them up front the expectations, giving them a rubric, showing them a model if you have one, all those things that help them to succeed because they know clearly what the expectations are. And you've modeled it all along the way and given them feedback. So deep breath, that was a really fast look at Unit 2. And now we're going to repeat it with Unit 3.
You know that picture proof, Todd at Mail does that with, he gives assignments where they have to do like 5 physical activities over the course of a semester or whatever in health class, and then he has them bring pictures in and he prints them out and puts stuff on his wall and stuff. He's used that very effectively.
Vitality makes us do that too.
Oh, that's
Proof
true.
over the stairs.
That's a great point. As always, I'm going to ask us to take a couple of quiet minutes so that everyone can read the unit overview for analyzing influences. So if you would, just take a few minutes to read that silently. And you see we have, every time, new skill cues. This time it's to identify the influence, analyze that influence, examine the factors that might be contributing or interacting with that influence as well, and then consider whether I need to do anything about this influence. So we have different skills cues. And they talk about in the book that this is often something that is unexamined for children, for students. They are often, especially when they think about their internal influences, those in particular are often ones that are not transparently explored for them. So this can be a very powerful unit. I'm going to ask you to do the same process. This time I'll number us a little differently, so it'll be less confusing. So would you take lesson 1, lesson 2, Lorenzo lesson 3, lesson 4, summative assessment, the performance task. Lesson 1, lesson 2, we'll ask Robert to take 3, 4, and the performance assessment. Okay? But let's just kind of get a quick feel for what we see in Unit 3. Lesson 1, would you briefly share?
I thought you said Unit 3 for 3 for minutes, or 3.
They start with a scenario, and the students reflect on the decision the person made, goes into the definition of influences and how to make healthy decisions, and takes it back to the scenario, makes an anchor chart, and then talks about misconceptions, building awareness, and how no one decision is made solely like always that way. It depends on the situation that the person's in. So like the scenario, when you look in the book, it's talking about, I haven't read it, but about a sexually active student. So depending on the student, depending on how they would affect their influences and their decision. And then talking about positive and negative influences and the ways that they combat that with media and technology. And then where they break down many different influences in their life. And then like a little exit slip on them thinking about the influences on their lunch choice from the previous day as an exit. So build those foundations.
Would you add anything to that?
Personal values or beliefs could be the other thing used instead of spirituality.
She had an aha. So lesson 2 then.
It takes from, at the beginning the teacher uses some form of media and they're asked questions about the audience, what the communication, how to make them feel, if it's positive or negative. And then the teacher goes into, before they actually start practicing and before they introduce the skills cues, they start talking about the external and internal influences, and they define it as a class, and then they use the resource list that they created from the previous lesson, and they go through and highlight what the source is and determine whether it's internal or external. And then they go into teacher-guided skill cues, and the teacher goes through each skill cue and they guide them on how to direct it.
Same. Okay. Lesson 3.
This one just focuses on you giving the students time to practice the skill of analyzing analyze the influences. You start off with a warm-up activity that they can relate to. That brings you into taking that activity to a mini lesson. In that mini lesson, you'll give them some type of valid risk behavior, not survey, but information like risk factors that affect kids at that age, and then they will be in small groups, maybe 2, and then they'll eventually get to groups of 4. But in the groups of 2, they'll pick one of those health concerns that they think relates directly to them, and then with that partner, they'll practice that skill, and then those partners that were, in groups of 2, they'll then get in another group, and it'll be a group of 4, and then they'll just start sharing information about the stuff that they analyze with each other, and then at the end of the lesson, I guess the teacher takes a couple groups that actually were really, really good that they can use as an example, so that way the class can have a better understanding of how to analyze some of these risks that are associated with them.
So they've gotten to practice analyzing influences in the context of those risk factors. Awesome. And then lesson 4.
So kind of a last final practice before the performance assessment, using a type of gallery walk. with posters of unhealthy behaviors around the room, and the students can go to each poster as, I think, pairs or something, and make comments on the poster and then circulate around, and the next group that comes up would then add to or check off or agree with what was on the poster previous.
And in the very beginning, they had them write down the different factors, put them in order, like peers or family or culture from 1 to 5. How you feel like you're affected. I guess I discussed that.
So they got to self-rate what influenced them the most, their own influences, and then the posters had them think about the influences within those other situations. Okay. And the performance assessment.
Basically, it just kind of lays it out. It says a few different assessments that you could use, one that's in the book and then one activity that's in there. It's another like wheel, it's the wheel of influence, and it just has the kids kind of lay out what's influencing that behavior, or how it's influencing them, I guess. What's the message they're receiving, or that they're, I guess, receiving that's creating that health behavior. Did you add anything to that?
Yes, and then, it also talked about repeating those same steps for other parts of the wheel of wellness from the first unit on the goal setting, so it tied back into that.
So the performance assessment makes them demonstrate all of the skills cues through the context of that assignment. I keep getting those terms confused. What's it called? The wheel of influence. Wheel of influence this time. So they would use the wheel of influence to demonstrate that they could do all of that. Okay. So thank you. Nice job doing a very fast forward version of a lot of material. And again, when you go back and you read that, and you get to process it, you know, one lesson after the other, I'm sure that's gonna help. But it gives us a nice big picture. What I hope that we were able to see was the steps of the model and how that is strategically laid out across every unit, because that's the big picture, the skill development. And of course, you know, modifications may happen. This is living, breathing. You guys are gonna get feedback, but that's the intention, is that we'll see the content there, but we'll see those skills developed. So moving forward, I'm going to let Donna take over here because I know she has some final thoughts that she wants to share with you all.
I can't emphasize enough how important, how important it is that I wear my mic. Okay. How important it is that we get people to the training on July 26th, okay? So you could help me in 2 ways. One is if there is a colleague you know who's a health teacher who's not here today, contact them directly. If there's somebody in your school, like who's taking Amanda's place, and if you don't have to answer that, but if you could check with Seneca and see if they're hiring somebody, and if they're hired, you know, let them know, that kind of thing, okay? We're also going to do this if they're hiring somebody from outside the district, we're going to do this during new teacher inductions. So anyway, see if you can really help me with that. And if you get online and evaluate ahead of time, soon, and it's positive, I was thinking maybe I could pull some of those quotes to share with all the rest of the health teachers to see if we could really get some people here. And then if people are hired later, that's why we're taping it. We will have that, okay? But you can see how important it is to need this training before you can begin to do this. Okay, then, okay, thank you. Then we have to do some follow-up, and I know we don't have a lot of time period to talk about this today, but will you give us some thought? Again, I think you can see how important it is that we stay in contact with each other. So one idea I had was, and will do, is make a distribution list just of the teachers that came today and on the 26th. And then, you know, if somebody develops something, like I used this product and it was phenomenal, do that, or I did this and it was a bust, or whatever. So some easy way is through distribution lists. PLCs, and again, I know there's issues, and if you can tell me how to solve this, but, you know, we're willing to pay you to come, I don't know, online, whatever it makes, but I really can see a PLC of secondary health teachers working through this year. I'd love to make it happen. So be thinking about what that would look like and when and where and how and what would get you here, because I know it's a problem.
Is there a possibility of everybody getting on and Skyping? It's
Yes,
just the getting to.
I know.
Yes,
In
I agree with
elementary
that.
PE, and it takes 3 sessions to really get it even rolling, and then you're halfway through.
Okay, but let's not, I'm open to all suggestions, so we can pursue that, anyway. And then the goal days, there's one in October and one January 2nd this year. I'm gonna try to get you guys, to get my leadership, to get the big leadership, like if Carmen Coleman, the Chief Academic Officer, says, release them, okay? Or maybe it's pulling you guys and paying for a sub, I don't know. And if you have any ideas, I'm open to them. So the gold days, there's those optional PD days. If you hit your hours, I could pay you if you were willing to come. And so I'm open to any and all ideas how to bring us together, okay? And then we need to continue writing lesson plans for the next, we've got 3 done and there's 7, so 4 more. We've got 4 more of these to do. So we want your input, and but know that we'll be writing and you'll be getting them. And again, we don't really just want to hand them out, so we were trying to see, when you would need them, and is there a way to get us together for not this long of a training, but some kind of training to look through them and brainstorm and all of that. And all along the way, your feedback is appreciated. Another neat idea we came up with was to have this hashtag Own My Health, and so we're going to make that happen. And again, if you have any ideas, but we envision teachers and students tweeting out what happened in their classrooms, or I don't know. I think social media has infinite possibilities. So, and finally, I emailed you all. You should have gotten an email while you were here from me, from John somebody at Human Kinetics, and he said, and don't forget, there's that page in the back of your book of what the page looks like to get online. He said to get online and set up an account, and then email him and tell him you have an account set up, and then he will send you a password to get in, okay?
Quick question.
And that just created a group of everyone that was here today.
No, that just gives you personally, that email only went out to you guys, but it gives you access to the online resources.
But for sharing to each other, now we have an email with all of that.
That's correct, that's correct, that's correct. Yes.
Quick question. One of the questions is company, institution, or organization. What would you like us to put there?
Jefferson County Public Schools.
So JCPS, or spell it out, or?
I think I would spell it out.
Jefferson County Public Schools, okay. Just wanted to make sure if there was something in particular.
Okay, so what else do you all?
Do you want to share that?
Oh my Lord, yes. Okay. This, again, was developed in the context of the training with Carmen Coleman, and I cannot tell you how excited she was, and I am. And here's the deal: anybody who's in this training, like principals, assistant principals, all that, they're really pushing that every school will have this. They're calling it a graduation profile, or a Ballard High School graduation profile, or whatever. So every school would have this that says, when our kids graduate from Ballard, these are the skills they're going to have to be college, career, and life ready. It's like a guarantee almost. And, it's very specific. I've got a million examples if you all want to look at them. But anyway, so then I got the idea to develop that for our health classes. And so we had this design, the hashtags on it, and each of these skills is here. And at this point, all we did was come up with a certificate. But again, I'm very open. Like we envision, how, what are they called? Like badges, online badges are really big right now. And so maybe it's that, and as a kid completes each unit, they would get some kind of online badge, so it wouldn't be a printed certificate. But anyway, so we're open to develop, but the idea is that this, we're guaranteeing that when our students leave our health class, they will have had this opportunity to acquire, practice, deepen those skills. Okay? So, I know we don't have a lot of time now, but if you have any ideas, feedback, suggestions about anything that happened today, everything that I just brought to you, I promise I will follow up on what we said we will do, and I'll add school leadership to that one. Those of you who borrowed a textbook, will you leave them, please? Because I need them for the people that are coming on the 26th.
Did you have a chance to see Zoom that one?
Do you know, I didn't, to answer your question, but if you stay 1 minute, I printed out I can find, if you'll stay 1 minute, I can find out for you, okay?
Just don't want to, like.
If you'll stay 1 minute, I can find out. Anybody else, is there anything else you wanna say, ask, add, suggest?
This is one of the better ones this summer, thank you.
Yes.